Today's 60-pound behemoth of a G3 all-in-one Mac shenanigans are brought to you by Ren. But more on that in a bit. It's Hideous. I recently picked up this Macintosh G3 all-in-one, also known as the Molar Mac. Guess why? Not only is it the ugliest Macintosh ever released, but it's incredibly hard to find because it was only ever sold in the education market. So today we're gonna crack into this thing that I have never turned on before and literally just picked up, see what kind of horrible state it's in, and see if we can get it reasonably working, because I have some pretty wild upgrades that I really want to put into this thing. So stay tuned. And if you're surprised that Apple once put function over form instead of the other way around in the most hideous way possible, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. We work with a lot of hideous 90s pragmatically designed computers around here, so it's definitely worth sticking around. So a little context on where this hideous abomination of a computer design came from. The Macintosh G3 all-in-one came out in March 1998. Internally, it's pretty excellent. It's basically the same as the Power Mac G3 Tower. Yep. And the Power Mac G3 Desktop, which have exactly the same motherboard as this big G3 all-in-one. But the education market didn't want to buy a whole desktop or tower system that needed a separate monitor and cables all over the place. So Apple wrapped up these two pro-level machines with a built-in 15-inch CRT. And of course, apparently, they did not give a F about what this thing wound up looking like, because it is literally shaped like a hideous molar monster. Hold on, I have an idea. There, now it actually looks like a monster. Kind of looks like Krang. Now, chances are, even if you went to school in the late 90s when these things were out, you probably never saw one. It was released to the education markets in early 1998, but in late 1998, another machine came along that proved just a hair more popular, especially in schools. Yep. The G3 iMac. It was released just months after Mr. Hideous Molar here, and it had form and function. Plus, the iMac was faster and cheaper. This thing started at $12.99 for a beautiful piece of industrial design versus $14.99 for this thing. Most people made the obvious choice. And this hideous, disgusting, unsettling lump of beige was discontinued in September 1998, just 9 months after it was released. But the monstrously hideous G3 all-in-one offers something that the iMac doesn't. Extreme expandability. And for that reason alone, I love this thing. Given that it's just a beige Power Mac G3 crammed into an all-in-one hideous case, we can probably do all of the same upgrades that we could do to a regular beige G3. And we'll have a super weird, super powerful machine that can trace its lineage directly back to the original all-in-one 1984 Macintosh. Look, it's like this thing is this thing's hideous mutant older brother or something. So let's take a quick look around this machine, see all of its hideous and unique quirks and features, and see if it still even powers up, because I have not tried that yet. And we'll obviously take it apart first to see what kind of nightmare of corrosion lies within. Nightmare of Corrosion. That's a pretty sweet band name. Right after this word about today's sponsor, Ren. You know, there's a bit of an environmental slant to our weird vintage computer collecting hobby here. Every machine that we restore, upgrade, and lovingly sit up on a very strong shelf is one less computer that winds up smashed into a landfill somewhere, and I think about that sometimes. Ren is a website where you can calculate your carbon footprint and then offset it by funding a diverse mix of carbon reduction projects, like tree planting, mineral weathering, and rainforest protection. Just answer a few questions about yourself and how you live and calculate your carbon footprint. And then you can offset that footprint by contributing to environmental causes that pique your interest. For me, the conservation projects really stand out, like the tech-enabled rainforest protection, which funds high-tech monitoring of the Amazon rainforest. And that kind of stuff really does interest me. And if it interests you too, check out ren.co and learn about ways to offset your carbon footprint. The first 100 people to sign up using the link in my description down below will have 10 extra trees planted in their name. Okay, so condition-wise, this G3 All-in-One really isn't that bad. I mean, it's filthy, but all the plastics are mostly intact. It still has these nice translucent Apple logos on the side. This one is way too nice for action retro shenanigans. This one's actually destined for your friend and mine, Steve from Mac84. Oh God, it's so heavy. This one is much more my style. It is an underdog. Not only is it way filthier, but it's missing a bunch of stuff, like the Apple logos fell off. Maybe they're inside the case here, and there's all kinds of cracks in the goofy top plastic, and stuff isn't lining up anymore. Just the kind of machine that I love to save. So we'll start our tour of the weird here on the front of the machine, where we have dual drives here. One is marked zip, although it's actually just a blank in there. There's no drive, so I think this is the lower spec model. And then, of course, a floppy drive here. We have a CD-ROM drive of some description, but most interestingly, there are two headphone jacks here, controlled by a center volume rocker knob, which is also suspiciously missing. And this is so two students sitting side by side could both hear on headphones what's going on the computer. Going around the side here, we have, oh my God, it's disgusting. And we're missing what should be the translucent Apple logo. Maybe that's just fallen in there. But around back here is where it gets really interesting, at least to me. This whole section here, there are 4 screws. Yeah, 4 screws. And if you take those screws out, this whole thing slides out as a drawer with the motherboard just easily accessible and just as upgradable, I hope, as the regular old Power Mac G3s. Oh, and it says right here, this is the 233 megahertz model, so the lower end model, with a 24x CD-ROM drive. Turning around the other side here. Yep, missing the Apple logo. But the worst part of this Mac is the top. Let me show you. Yeah, who did this? It's horrible up here. It looks like they just took a piece of transparent plastic and melted it onto the top here with kind of this indented area. I mean, it really looks like the top of a tooth. Why did they do this? It's the worst thing ever. But hey, I guess this is kind of the genesis of translucent plastics on Macintoshes. This is really beat up here. Some of these screws are just hanging on by a thread. Okay, let's open this. I'm sure this plastic is just going to crumble once we start pulling on it. Okay, so basically, if this doesn't look like it's horribly corroded in here, we're gonna plug this thing in and try to turn it on. As long as we can open it without breaking it. Yeah, you're supposed to be able to pull it out from here, but the back plastic is like disconnecting. Oh my God. I got it. Jeez. Okay, so we have to disconnect some of these cables before pulling this whole thing out. It's actually very clean in here. There is no corrosion. By some miracle, the battery hasn't leaked. We'll just go ahead and take that out. This kind of looks like a new one. I've never seen a black Saft battery, but we'll take this out and replace it with a new one at some point. Oh, I see. There's the drive sled in there for the zip drive, but no zip drive. However, they helpfully included the little adapter here to power it, should we decide to install a zip drive ourselves. But yeah, this is in good enough condition that I think we can just try and boot it up. Okay, so I didn't push that drawer all the way back in here for our first boot attempt since it was such a pain to pull out, which makes this CD-ROM drive opening look even more like a screaming mouth. All right, let's switch this thing on. CRT made a noise. Lights, chime, and very loud hard drive. Hey! It's alive and booting into Mac OS. Alright, well apparently someone had a little fun with the resolution here. But we know it's not the monitor because the initial raster was correct. Oh god. Welcome to At Ease. Let's see if we can fix the screen resolution here. Okay, so I set it to a more reasonable resolution, 832 by 624. Oh, and it gets nice and bright. This screen looks quite sharp, actually. And in this app here, this control panel, we can change kind of everything. We can stretch the image out to fill the whole screen. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Position it. Oh yeah, using up that whole big beautiful screen. I don't know what it's actually supposed to be set to for, you know, pixel correctness and the correct size for desktop publishing, but yeah, I like it like this quite a lot. Well, I think it's time for us to have a good old-fashioned cleaning montage. Good news, everyone! I've taken it most of the way apart and I found some things inside. Not only did I find the little nubby volume knob in there, but hiding inside the case, I found the little translucent Apple logos. Both of them. And they're in perfect condition. So through the cunning use of Gorilla Glue, I've put them back on and hopefully they stay. And after quite a lot of magic eraser and Windex and Goo Gone, this thing is pretty close to spotless. Yellow, but spotless. But before I put this back together, let's take a quick look at the motherboard, which I've taken the whole cage assembly out so we have full access because I do want to do something about that spinning hard drive. So here is the assembly that holds the motherboard plus all the drives, including the hard drive, which is down here. So all of the other Power Macs in this series have a personality card, which can do things like allow video input and output and do stuff with sound, and I kind of forget. But the all-in-one has a unique card here, which takes video out to the built-in monitor. And actually, I'm kind of curious, is this VGA or RGB or something? Because the one limitation of really upgrading the bejesus out of this would be how to get better video to the internal monitor. So if we put a better PCI graphics card in here, that would only work with the external monitor. But is there some way to hack it to work with the internal monitor? If you have an answer, let me know in the comments down below. But here's the G3 processor, helpfully on a daughter card on this little zero insertion force socket. So we can easily swap that out with something new. And oh boy, do I have something new for this machine. If you've been around the channel since the beginning, you might have an idea of what I'm actually going to put in here. But yeah, no spoilers for now. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because I have a heck of an upgrade that's going to go in here. But for now, the main thing I want to do is just take out the old spinner hard drive and put in something solid state. So the cables, the IDE cable and the power cable are just run underneath the motherboard here. And then the drive is on an incredibly fragile sled made of disintegrating plastic. But I still have a whole bunch of these disc-on modules, solid state storage with IDE connectors here. So I think I want to try to use one of these. This is a 16 gigabyte module. So I'm just going to unplug the hard drive's IDE cable. Smack this fella in there since it doesn't actually need a cable. And we'll free up a lot of space in this general vicinity, which we will need. And then for power, just while we're testing this, I'm going to usurp the power connector for the non-existent zip drive. And I'll just fold this up in here for now, since we actually have to take the motherboard out to get that cable all of the way out. And then yeah, I'm going to put this back together. Okay, so we have this thing pretty well sorted out now. Fortunately, we found all the broken bits inside the case when I took it apart, and I have lovingly super glued them back in. So we have our nice translucent apples, we have our volume rocker knob, and it cleaned up pretty well. You know, it almost looks better than Steve's at this point.
Oh.
But that'll do it for today's video. I've got a lot of really wacky plans for this machine, so yeah, make sure you're subscribed if you want to see a Molar Mac probably explode. But if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more disgusting, horrible, hideous computers like this one, please subscribe down below. And thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Camilla Noseda, Chris Allegretta, Chris Biggs, Chris Calderon, Chris Nelson, Cobalt Retrotech, Control-Alt-Reese, Daniel Hubbard, Dwight A. Spencer, Greg from Rutk Mods, Paul Spencer, Ryan, Scott Thompson, and Sutek, who are my highest tiered patrons and all of my Patreon supporters for helping to make these videos possible.